Hi, you've clicked onto today's tropical tidbit for Wednesday. This is going to be mostly a test run to see how this new setup works out. I might try to start making some of these videos again because I know I certainly appreciate visual representation of things I'm trying to learn, and a picture is worth 1,000 words and a motion picture is priceless, so I'm going to try to see if I can do these. They're really fun and a learning experience for me, and I hope they help some of you guys visualize what I talk about in my blog. So we'll see how this works out with this new setup. So today, out in the Atlantic, the big eye catcher is Invest 93L, this big area of building heat in the Central and Eastern Caribbean. You can see that it's still a rather disorganized and spread out area of showers and thunderstorms, but overall looks a little bit better than yesterday. Also over here in the Eastern Pacific, there's like their fourth storm, Darby I believe this is over here, a tropical storm that just formed over here, and they're really having a bursting of activity right now. We also notice a interesting little tropical wave out here in the Eastern Atlantic that's propagating west-northwestward over here, and this might get a little interesting down the road as it gets into this moist area. It's actually probably going to go north of the islands over here, so we'll see how that works out. It might start to fire some convection later on. But right now the big story is 93L, and if we take a close-up shot here, we can see that the center where the models have been initializing it is actually over here south of Jamaica, which is one of the last places I would have looked for it when I first woke up this morning. But you can see the area of turning in here, and that's where the real center is, if we want to call it that. But I wouldn't be surprised if we get some sort of a reformation of the center of the action over here where all the convection is. There's actually another tropical wave that was behind 93L. This is the current tropical wave. There's another one coming up south of Puerto Rico over here, and that's adding to the convection. There's actually a nice little area of vorticity on CIMSS analysis maps this morning over in here. It'll be interesting to see if this comes into this area and tries to spin up a new low center, because this area right here is rather void of convection, and I wouldn't be surprised to see something shift further east and north over here. If we look at the bigger picture to see how this is all being put together, we notice that the wind regime in the Caribbean is much different than it normally is. We've got southeast trade winds coming in here. Normally they're out of the east-northeast throughout the entire Caribbean, and this whole area is considered a dead zone for tropical development because you get screaming east-northeasterlies in here that just rip apart convergence. But we have them coming out of the southeast here, and when you get these coming out of that direction and trying to turn back to the east with this very westerly component over here north of South America, that's just asking for air to pile up right in this area, and lots of convergence ends up going on in here. And what that's indicating to us is that pressures are high over South America with the weaker Colombian heat low, and that gives us the westerly component in here, and you can see where that would set up low pressure across the Caribbean. And that's the kind of pattern we're looking at this year, where pressures are lower and air is allowed to really pile up in this area, and you can see that manifested by 93L with this large area of convection. And with it sitting over this big upper high over top, you can see the clouds moving in a clockwise direction, the upper clouds around the system. That's providing low wind shear and providing ventilation as the air is able to escape out of the tops of the thunderstorms and allow the surface pressures to lower. And this is the reason why this really should, in theory, develop, because there's nothing really stopping it here. Conditions will be rather conducive along its entire journey. Now, sometimes these things don't develop. It does take a lot of time to bundle this much heat. You see there's convection spread out over a very large area. It can take days and days and days to consolidate this, but if it ever actually does bundle the heat energy, then you got to really look out, because this thing could take off really fast. They do this a lot in other ocean basins around the world, where they have large oceans, large amounts of heat that they have to consolidate, and it can take days and days for cyclones in the Indian Ocean and the Western Pacific to develop, but once they do, they really take off. Now, if we look over here at the European, the model that's been jumping all over this system the most, we can see that by 48 hours over here it has a low forming northeast of Nicaragua, And it'll be interesting to see if it really does develop this far southwest, as again we might see a focusing of the energy more over here depending on how things work out. You can see it has a piece of upper energy over here off to the northeast, so it is possible that low development will take place further off in that direction. But as we go out in time here, we see that it brings the low close to the tip of the Yucatan Peninsula, and as it gets up into the Gulf here, it really starts winding things up. Now this is where disagreements start to pop up among the models, because you've got a long wave trough diving into the eastern seaboard over here, and as we go out in time, this really starts to wind up here south of the North Gulf Coast. But as this comes down, it's going to be a big issue of timing and the strength of this trough and the strength of the system, what direction it's going to go. It could end up going off this way towards Texas as the ridge builds back in this way, or we could have it come up all the way into the eastern Gulf if this trough picks it up. A lot of it will have to do with timing, and a lot of it will have to do with the strength of the system. Now the real danger with this situation is that with this trough coming down, the ridge is going to be trying to build right back in, because this ridge over the southeastern US does not want to leave at all. So this trough isn't going to just dig in and sit there. Instead, it's going to try lifting back out. If we go out here to day 9, we can see the hurricane in here really ramping up south of Louisiana, but then we go ahead another 24 hours and it barely moves because this trough is lifting out and this ridge is building right back in over the top. And the real danger here is that the system gets caught in an area of very weak steering currents and could have a lot of time to sit in this area of the Gulf approaching the coast, and that could give it a lot of time over warm water and favorable conditions aloft to really ramp up. And that is a real concern if this does develop and get in here, that it could have a lot of time on its hands to really get going. Now something that might limit the system if it gets in the Gulf is something the GFS is showing us. This is the 0Z run from last night at 180 hours next Wednesday. It shows the trough diving into the eastern seaboard. And we notice that the trough is enhancing a band of westerlies here over the Gulf, upper westerlies at 200 millibars, and this would induce a lot of wind shear over anything that is potentially in the Gulf, and this could be something that might limit the system on approach to the North Gulf Coast. If the trough digs in deep enough, it might enhance some winds over the system that would shear it. Now the big difference here is that the GFS shows absolutely no development. At this point there is a large area of sub 10-12 pressures in here, but no real system to speak of. If we really did have a tropical storm or hurricane moving into the Gulf, we would have more of a ridge over top of the system. You would see the base of the trough would be flatter. You would have more of an outflow channel around the system instead of this howling trough of westerlies over the top of the Gulf of Mexico. So there would be differences here if a storm was actually in the area. However, it is possible that we might get some help from this trough if it digs in deep enough. I'm not quite sure it's going to get this amplified. It might be a little flatter in here, but it is something to watch for and something to hope for, because otherwise conditions are going to be prime for real development. This is different than most season openers. Most season openers, such as Arlene in 2005 that came out of the Caribbean into Florida, was a sheared system. All the action was east of the center. There was nothing to the west. This is very different. We have an upper high over the system. It's going to be moving into the Gulf with favorable conditions, very warm water, and it is a situation that should have people very concerned, because this has potential to really bite someone in a bad way. So we will be watching it. Well, that's all for now. Please feel free to give me feedback. You can tell me this was a completely horrible idea to start doing these videos again. You can insult my voice, which has gotten way too deep for its own good in the last couple of years. You can insult my awesome pink cursor over here. And you know, there's a good reason it's pink. It just happens to show up in contrast very well with most of the maps I use, so other things like yellow or red or green just don't quite cut it. But you know, nothing wrong with pink. Pink is awesome. Pink is great. Anyway, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.